Mr. Marion, welcome to the committee. Good to see you. You have 3 minutes and you may proceed.
Likewise, thank you. I'm John Marion, Executive Director of Common Cause Rhode Island. I just want to welcome back Mr. Brace, and it's nice to see him, and I hope I didn't cause that heart attack. I'll be brief. We've sent 3 letters over the course of the last 3 months. The first one on September 7th that was signed on by more than 24 organizations bringing up this issue. And most recently, we sent a letter just last week, along with Prison Policy Initiative and the ACLU, trying to answer Senator Filag's question. And, you know, we come down on you have the power to do this essentially because you're an advisory body, right? You are going to send maps to the Assembly. The Assembly can choose to adopt them as you send them, or they can choose to amend them, which they have done. So there's precedent that they don't have to enact what you send them. So, you know, we think, you know, I know there's some skepticism about doing this, but we think it is an activity that's worth doing. I just want to echo Alex in that, you know, you aren't going to achieve perfection. No state has achieved perfection, but you will be doing some justice to those who you do relocate to their home community. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good here, because you're not going to achieve the perfect. The second point I want to make is with respect to Cranston's point of view on this. And I do want to point out, I don't think he's here tonight, but the minority leader of the Cranston City Council did send a letter supporting reallocating the prisoners who don't live in Cranston. So while the mayor is the mayor and you have a letter from the majority leader, there are other public officials in Cranston who would support that change. And it's about, as Alex said, it's not about Cranston. It's about the other 38 communities. There will be a portion, I think it was 146, who will be located in Cranston, and they will be correctly represented. But the balance of them will be in the other 38 communities. And just kind of cleaning up a couple other points. Want to echo, for the first time in my career, Representative Corvesi, that I worked quite a bit on the census outreach. You know, I was one of the chairs of one of the major committees of the Complete Count Committee. The census is a snapshot. They literally count unsheltered people on the street where they spend the night on April 1st, 2020. So you just have to keep in mind it's a snapshot. 2 other points. One, the mayor brought up comparing us to other New England states. Connecticut is doing this, as Kim said, but keep in mind that New England comparison is not good. In Vermont and Maine, prisoners, including those serving felonies, can vote. I'm not proposing that, but you should know that. And the second thing is you need to look into why the ACI asked him to enter a non-disclosure agreement. Other states have made this public data public, and we are withholding this data from the legislature. Essentially, he is your proxy. So as a matter of oversight, I think that's an important one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marion. Are there any questions for this witness from any members of the committee? Senator Metz.
Yeah, just observation. I agree. We seek perfection, but we have to start somewhere. So everyone seeks perfection, whatever your career, whatever you do, we try to do the best we can, but not to do anything is worse. So what they say, justice too long delayed is justice denied, as Dr. King used to say. So we have to start somewhere, and where we start, then we keep striving toward perfection. So I appreciate your testimony, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reppucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make one thing clear, because I think, Mr. Marion, I understand what you said about the drawing of the maps, and I just want everyone just to level set everyone of where we are. The Constitution requires the House and the Senate to reapportion after the census. And then the legislature created this reapportionment committee for the purpose of drafting a report to the General Assembly. And it is to divide the 75 rep districts, the 38 Senate districts, and the 2 congressional districts is near, I'm going to read the statute, is near equal as possible, subject to the final census data provided by the Census Bureau. So the charge of this group is to, when the maps are set and a report is given, is to follow the census data. That's in the statute. Now, as you had said, what happens afterward is the legislative process, when I think then this issue itself would be addressed. But I think it would be beyond our scope to do that according to the plain language of why we all sit here. That's the words of what we're charged with.
Can I?
You can respond, Mr.
briefly?
Marion. Go ahead, sure.
Yeah, no, I agree that that's what the statute says, but the statute doesn't, I read it, forbid you from making the adjustments to the census data. And I would point out that the file the state received from the Census Bureau has, and Alex can speak better to this, has a special designation for those tracts in which the prison is, because of this very purpose. Like the Census Bureau 10 years ago made a decision that, listen, there's enough demand from states to reallocate folks who are residing in prisons to other communities, that we need to now provide that census data file, the PL file, to you with a special notation. So I really think, that the census data file is yours to use, but you can use it to do this. I guess probably not the most articulate way to say it. I'm trying to think of a way to.
I don't want to I mean, if you look at as we look at keeping contiguous districts, which is one of the to get the data files that are more accurate, clearly, like Mr. Brace said, not having that. I think it's a shock to everyone to know that those houses. I know that where that neighborhood is was actually part of what looked like the ACI complex, or the Howard complex, the last time. I think having more fidelity in the numbers to understand the buildings and where folks are, and then you can start to understand. But again, I'm reading what it says in here and what the General Assembly ultimately does. We have to be done by January in following this statute, and then from there it becomes that process. And I believe we passed 10 years ago the final probably in March or April. So
February.
In February. So yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
There is time, especially hearing all this, to absorb it, to understand. I'm not saying that. I'm just cautioning everyone that if we think we're going to have maps that do that, I think the final census data, because what you would be doing is we'd just be putting people wherever we want, and that would mean we could do that for any reason. We could just move people around. I mean, I think that's a slippery slope with what you had said about the fidelity of the data to go down that path.
Senator Rogers.
I just want to piggyback on that also. I took a lot of notes and I've been putting a lot of thought into this, and tonight has helped me out a lot, but that was one of my concerns. Does this committee have the authority to do what we're being asked to do? And that's the first question. And I don't think we do. I think it should be done through the General Assembly, and that information came tonight. Well, most of these states did it through the General Assembly. And the rep brought up a good point, Reppucci, about this has to be done and forwarded and ready by January. And last time I checked, when I tried to do something fast just to meet a deadline, if this short, you're really taking 2 steps back to fix all the problems you had when you stop moving forward and realize the mistakes you made. We're picking up on one issue, the prison. And I sit here and I think, well, what about the colleges and how are they counted? And again, I'll go back to the point. It's a snapshot in time of people, not registered voters, not people that can vote, just all people totality. You have some communities that have a lot of DCY involvement and placements out of their original cities to other places throughout the state. Why isn't that being brought up? You've got placements in nursing homes. You've got military service people. So we're just picking on one. It's almost like we're cherry picking, for the sake of an argument, cherry picking one subject and not looking at it holistically. So I think it needs to be looked at, but we're in the 11th hour of something that needs to be done. And they're all valid, but there are many more other valid things that are equally should be addressed, like I mentioned, DCYF, military college students. So if we're going to do this, I really think we should do it right. And it's a rush at this point, I think, and even if we had the authority to do it as a committee. And that's just what I'm seeing from what I'm taking in tonight.
Thank you, Senator. Any more questions from any members of the committee? Senator Felag.
I guess my question was relative to authority, but the more I think about it, it's more of a recommendation. So in other words, we could possibly give 2 recommendations. We could give a recommendation based on what we feel the maps should be, And that's clearly what's within our scope to indicate that this would be the map of the 38 Senate districts and the 75 rep districts, because that's part of our charge. But also, we could probably give a recommendation whether or not this gerrymandering exists, and I believe it does, and that we need to make that recommendation. Or you saying that we have the authority to actually implement it?
No, I don't think I wasn't trying to say you have the authority to implement or enact maps. You are an
Correct.
advisory body to the General Assembly, so I think you could advise them to adopt these maps that have corrected this problem. Theoretically, you could send them two sets of maps, one where Mr. Brace has reallocated people or reassigned people, and another where he hasn't, and let them have the final decision.
Exactly. And that was what I was sort of alluding to in terms of our recommendations. And we could do that, make that recommendation if we chose forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator De La Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through all the testimony, one stuck out to me by Council President Papalakis. Yes, okay. He correctly stated that the United States Circuit Court of Appeals of the First Circuit ruled in favor of the city of Cranston to determine that including prison inmates in the Cranston population for redistricting was constitutional. We know that they are one heartbeat away from the Supreme Court of the United States. So if they find it's constitutional, your argument isn't very compelling to me.
I didn't say the word constitution or constitutional a single time in 3 minutes. I'm not arguing it's unconstitutional. I'm just arguing that they should be reassigned to their home communities. I could make constitutional arguments on other subjects, but I'm not making one here.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So it is constitutional. And I'm just going to...
I'm not making an argument either way.
Okay.
We have that point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Senator.
And I'd like to just point out, as Senator Rogers was saying, and he so rightly said, and first of all, I'm going to start off by saying, of course I oppose gerrymandering. I wouldn't want to see a group of people having an advantage over another, regardless of their race, their political affiliations, their gender, how they identify. We certainly don't want to disenfranchise anyone. But if we are going to do it for prisoners, it's only fair and equitable that we do it across the board in all areas. I represent Zambarano Hospital. A lot of those individuals are there. We don't know for how long. Some of them are for 40 years. Some of them are for much less. I don't know how long they'll be there, depending on how quickly they recover, if they recover. There are psych patients at the Eleanor Slater campus in Cranston. We certainly don't know how long they're going to be at the hospital. If we're going to apply this standard, we do it in all categories. Otherwise, it's not fair and equitable. And it's not an issue of race for me. It's a matter of fairness. Either we do it for DCYF, illegal residents, college students, Zambarano residents, and then yes, we do it for the ACI. And no one's mentioned the Wyatt Detention Center. Fair and equitable for all, or we keep it as is.
So may I quickly?
Yes, just briefly, because we have quite a few more people to get to. Yes.
Quick points. One is all those populations you talked about people are at the ACI because their liberty's been taken away. They aren't there by their own free will. And there's a statute in question that I would urge you all to look at, which I believe it's 17.1.3.1, which Mayor Hopkins first mentioned, has been mentioned a couple other times since. Rhode Island law enacted by the General Assembly says that a person's domicile does not change because of their incarceration, right? So by fixing this, you would be just following the law as it was enacted by the General Assembly. None of those other populations are subject to that clause about incarceration in there, just the folks at the ACI.
Thank you, Mr. Marion. One quick follow-up by Senator De La Cruz,
you.
and then Senator Metz, and then we're going to move on. Senator De La Cruz.
Yes, so I would argue that the kids in DCYF care are not there because they want to be, and I would also argue that there are patients at Zambrano Hospital and Eleanor Slater in Cranston that are there not because they want to be, but because the court has ordered them to be there. So it's not just the prison population. There are others that are forced to leave their homes and reside somewhere else.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Metz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, and I'm all for looking out for everyone, but I just want to point out that it was around 10 years that I tried putting bills statutorily to address the prison gerrymandering, and it always got glanced over. So, because Senator Casado always used to sign the bill with me, and so I'm glad that it's finally getting the attention. However it works out, I'm glad that it's finally getting the attention that it deserves, because in the past it was ignored. So this is very enlightening and appreciative by me and the people that always ask me to put this legislation in. Thank you.
I'm glad you're here to make those points, Senator. Thank you very much.